Hey, my name is Clint Dupin, and I'm one of the pastors here at Eastown. So thankful that you joined us today. I think the next few minutes are going to have an impact on your life. But before we get into that, I want to just mention a few things. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, whatever platform, I want you to subscribe because I believe the messages that we share are going to have an impact on your life. I also want to encourage you to share these messages because I think they can impact others as well. One of the things I always encourage people to do, if you're in the San Ramon area, I want to encourage you to drop in. In person is always better, right? So if you're in the East Bay of San Francisco, I would love to meet you. Now, our mission is all about bringing the love and the hope of Jesus Christ. Because I believe if you discover Jesus and you choose to follow Jesus, it will radically change your life and you will live in a life of freedom. I want you to consider one more thing. If Eastown has had an impact in your life, I want you to consider giving because we could not do it without the generosity of people like you. You can do that safely by going to easttown.church/give or simply downloading our Easttown Church app and you can give safely there as well. Hey, today is going to be great and I believe it will have an impact on your life. I hope you enjoy.
Hey, my name is Evan. I'm on the leadership team here at Eastown. I've been around Eastown for a while. Yeah, thank you so much. Don't cheer for me. Eastown has thrived in spite of me sometimes. Hey, we're going through this series that we finished that series running on empty, ? And then we kind of came to this series called At the End of the Day, right? It's about the health of our relationships. And it actually purposely kind of dovetails together because we want to really focus on what matters, right? Like all of those things that make our life chaotic, right? The sports practices, the things after school, our jobs, our careers, all those things, we want to kind of strip those away and really at the end of the day figure out what matters. And that's really our relationships, right? The quality of our lives is deeply connected to the quality of our relationships. And so we're going to dive into that. And we've kind of been pulling things out of some books that I would really recommend. You're going to see this on the screen right now, but these books called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. If you have not read this, I started reading it again when we started this series, and they're incredible. They really, really are. They have really helped me in my own faith, in my own journey, and in my own walk. And so last week, Clint talked a little bit about just kind of our own personal health, our emotional and spiritual health, and how important those things are to kind of focus on, to go back before moving forward, to understand ourselves more deeply. And today, as you have heard, I get to talk about marriage. Clint called me and was like, hey, are you up for talking about marriage? And I'm going to be honest with you that the very first thing I thought of was no. This is a bad idea. I don't. Maybe on the outside, people are like, yeah, you seem like you have it all together. I don't. My marriage has been up, down, good, bad, ugly, all kinds of things. And then I paused for a moment before I gave him an answer, and I said, maybe, to myself, maybe this is why, maybe God wants me to do this, because actually, maybe you can see in my weakness and in my shortcomings, you can see Jesus, because any success that I have in my marriage, any good things that have happened have not been because of me, but often in spite of me, and Jesus and the Spirit working in me in my relationship. So, let that be known that I am not up here thinking I have it all together. In fact, I'm going to tell you that I have it very not all together. And I hope that as I share stories with you, it encourages you and you see maybe a different path forward than what feels like might be the only outcome. I'm a high school teacher by trade during the day, and I teach history. And a lot of times what happens is during history class, I'm like, hey, I cannot tell you everything about this topic that we're talking about. There's not enough time in the day. I could like deep dive this stuff, but we literally only have the class period or this year. And so there's never enough. But we have this kind of motto in our class that I say, I don't know if the kids like it, but I do. Let it drive you to deeper research is often what I say. So if we're talking about like the American Civil War, I'm like, kids ask questions. I'm like, yes, let it drive you to deeper research. I'm going to tell you that today I cannot talk about everything that has with marriage. Like that's too big and too broad of a topic. But my hope and my prayer for you is that something sparks within your soul and it drives you to deeper research. And you understand that that spark is not something kind of cool or that I said, but it might be Jesus in you, the Spirit in you, prompting you to kind of take this step forward in your journey and discover more about yourself, more about your spouse, more about the idea of marriage. And I think it's important for me to stop right here for a second and recognize that not everybody in the room is married. And so that you might be like, okay, this is like my time to catch up on my sleep, my nap. No, I want to encourage you to something that I actually think that there is something for you today. I think there's something for everybody. I really do. You might be single, you might be divorced, you might be widowed, and you might feel like, hey, this is not how I envisioned my story to be. This is kind of not what I thought things would go. And I want you to know that your Creator loves you. And I would encourage you to just kind of take a moment to be held by Him and to understand that He is the great story writer, and that you may not know the outcome. You may not feel seen. I think the church has done not historically a great job of valuing people who have not been married. They've kind of seen this marriedness as like, hey, this is like the highest and best thing. This is like the ultimate relationship status to be. That's not true. That's not true. Jesus loves all of us, right? And is actually wanting to write your story in His image. And so I just want to encourage you to know that you are seen and loved and valued here, no matter what relationship status you have. And if the church has made you feel less than, I want you to know that those things are not of Jesus. They're not. They're just people making mistakes. What I have done quite a bit. And so I'm going to share a little bit today about two things. I want to give you a bit of a vision for what God has created marriage to be. And then I want to give you just a few practical steps that have seemed to work out somewhat well in my own life and in my own marriage. Before I jump into like God's design and things like that, I also want to recognize the fact that God, even though He made this marriage and had like designed this kind of certain way, it is incredibly difficult, right? I don't want you to think, oh, Evan's up there being like, this thing is easy. Just do these like 3 simple steps and everything will work out. That's not true. In fact, most of the steps that I tell you or share with you that have somewhat worked well for me were really difficult, were really challenging. It took a tremendous amount of work, a tremendous amount of time. A lot of times people make a joke like, hey, being married is like running a marathon. I've run a marathon, and I've also like run 100 miles before, and it's much more like running 100 miles. When I ran my 100-mile race, there was like, this is amazing. This is the worst thing I've ever done. I had existential angst. I was like, why did I do this? Oh, I know exactly why. There was all these back and forths, these highs and these lows, these ups and these downs, and marriage is so similar. There was a point when during the race, it was like pitch black outside. I was all alone. I was like, where am I? Who am I? What is the meaning of life? I don't know. And I have had some of those same feelings, to be very honest with you, in my marriage, where I've thought to myself, why did I do this? Like, it would be much easier in my mind to not do this than to do this. And so I want you to know that if you have had those feelings, if you think that like, I don't know if I want to keep going with this thing, you are not alone. You are not alone. But I also want you to know that I believe that there is a path forward for you that maybe isn't the same one that you thought is like, this is the only outcome that can be. So let me jump in. God has a design for marriage. Here's my first point. My first point is this: God has a design for marriage, and marriage as a reflection of God's love for you. And so I want you to know something very simple today, is that God loves you so, so much, so unconditionally. So if you go way back in the Bible, in the Old Testament part, and maybe I would encourage you, if you've never gotten a Bible, we have some in the back actually that you can have. But the Bible's split into 2, right? You got the Old Testament and the New Testament. And in the Old Testament, like the main character of the story as a whole is this nation of Israel. And God has chosen Israel as like His chosen people. And He's like, okay, follow me, and I'm going to make you great. And I'm going to Jesus is going to come through your line. It's going to be really awesome. And Israel continues to mess up. And there's a ton of times in the Bible where God actually uses the idea of marriage to communicate His relationship between Him and Israel. And so there's places in Hosea, in Isaiah, in Jeremiah, where God says, hey, it's like a marriage between you and me. I love you so much. But the problem is, in the story, if you look at the Old Testament as a whole, is it's mostly about Israel kind of messing up, kind of screwing up. And when I say kind of, I mean totally messing up. God's like, do this. And they're like, no. And they do their own thing. And God's like, hey, I want to keep you safe. I want to protect you. So follow these guidelines. And they're like, I'm going to do my own thing. And they do their own thing. And God, in the story of the Old Testament, when you like take this like step back and you look at it, God never leaves them. God never gives up. There's not a point in there where God goes, okay, that was actually the final straw. I'm all done with you. His love is so unconditional. And so if you look at it, like a lot of people don't look at the Old Testament like this, and I would encourage you to do it because you can take this step back and you can see God's love as patient, as forgiving, as persistent, keeps running after you. You can see it as restorative, like no matter what Israel has done wrong, he continues to love them. In the book of Genesis, right away, there's a verse that goes like this. It says, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. This idea is like this permanent union. And the word hold fast, I want to focus on that one right there. Hold fast implies this like deep binding commitment. Not this thing where it's like, hey, I'm kind of in on this, but this kind of like, hey, I'm in on this for good, forever, no matter what. And that reflection piece, that picture is super beautiful because that's how Jesus looks at you. That no matter what you think you have done in your past, no matter the screw-ups or mistakes that you have made, just like Israel continued to make in the Old Testament, there's actually this really beautiful picture of love that God has for you and that he wants us to extend to other people in our life. Specifically those who we are married to. And this can apply to everything, but for today, for the spouse that annoys you, that drives you insane sometimes, that like is like, oh, did you really just do that thing again? Right? God's love is patient, forgiving, persistent, restorative, and actually we can be those things too with God's power in us. In the New Testament, in Ephesians, they talk about marriage quite a bit in chapter 5. And again, it's this picture, and I hope you're seeing this idea of like a reflection of this picture of something kind of beautiful and poetic, of Christ loving the church and giving himself up for it. And there's this idea in it too that Jesus' love is also sacrificial, right? It's not a love that is about us. It's not about domination or control. It's actually about mutual care and honor for the good of others. Jesus in the New Testament like gives himself up. He dies for all of us. And that's like the ultimate picture of love as sacrifice, of literally sacrificing his life for the good of us. And we have this opportunity to reflect that, to show that in our relationships by not saying, hey, what's in it for me? This is all about what I can get out of the thing, but instead showing this reflection of God's love in our own relationships. And so when my wife drives me insane, or like this week we've had the Black Plague in our house, and it's been bad. And she had like a fever, and I'll be honest with you, like I probably could use a little bit more empathy in my caring when somebody is sick. I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, I'm going to move over there. But I have an opportunity to say, hey, this is less about me and more about the opportunity to love somebody. And you're like, that's easy. She's sick. Be a decent human being and help her out. But what about the times when like we disagree on something, when we're having tension in our finances, when we're having tension in, hey, I want to go and do this and you want to go and do that, when we're having disagreements where I've screwed up yet again, which I'll talk about more later, where I've continued to kind of do these things, we have an opportunity to sit at this kind of crossroads and to react out of like self-servingness or to react out of sacrificial love that Jesus does for us. And I want you to know that is really difficult to do. So I just want to recognize that as well, is I'm not telling you like, hey, just sacrificially love your spouse or sacrificially love those around you. I can't do that in my own power. I cannot do that without Jesus in me. Because Jesus gives me this strength and this ability to love those around me, specifically my wife, in ways that I will be very honest with you, I often don't want to. I have like these really great ideas in my mind sometimes where I'm like, I'm going to go and do this. And she's like, no, that's not a good idea. I'm like, you're terrible. But I know that seems so small, right? There are tons and tons of tension points in marriages. When I looked up some of the top causes for why marriages break down, right? It's like breaches of trust and infidelity. It's financial stuff. It's caring for your like elderly parents or like someone sick in the family. And there's these things that drive wedges between us. But when we can choose love, when we can choose the other over ourselves, I think it is an opportunity for us to reflect who Jesus is in our marriages, in our relationships, and in our lives. All right, let's jump to the second point. Second point is this idea of marriage as a covenant. This is kind of the big idea today, right? Is that marriage is a covenant. Maybe that idea of covenant is new for you, so we're going to talk a little bit about it. It shows up in a book in the Old Testament called Malachi in chapter 2, and there's a verse on the screen. Look at that. What timing. The Lord was witness between you and the wife of your youth. She is your companion and your wife by covenant. Covenant is this idea of this kind of like eternal promise that cannot be broken. A lot of times what ends up happening is in marriages is it feels like it's maybe one of convenience, like this kind of feels good, but instead of this thing of like, I've committed to this thing no matter what. And when we can reorient our minds and our decision making and the way we carry ourselves in that relationship around the idea that it is a covenant, this promise that we have made, there's an opportunity to, again, demonstrate the beauty of Jesus in our lives, of God in our lives, when we do that. All right, we're going to come back to an original verse I talked about before. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh, right? It's a lifelong covenant where they become one. And this isn't based out of like, hey, when this is good for me, when this works out for me, when it's like, when we're vibing together and just kind of feels good. This actually comes out of when it's the most difficult, you still make the choice. One of my favorite books is called The Meaning of Marriage by a guy named Tim Keller. And Tim Keller is really great. And he has this quote, and I really want to sit in this for a second, right? And it goes like this. The essence of marriage is that it is a covenant, a commitment, a promise of future love. So what do? You do the acts of love despite your lack of feeling. And I think that's really important to sit in for a second, is that there are often times when I do not feel like loving my wife. I actually, most of the time, feel like taking care of me. I lean more towards like, hey, what is going to come out of this for me? Am I going to get taken care of, or am I going to get taken advantage of? And I can sit there really, really easily because, honestly, I want, at the end of the day, to make sure that my needs get met. And it's hard to meet the needs of somebody else when I am entirely focused on mine. And if I let my emotions take the wheel and drive those things, I will only love her when it feels convenient to do so. And so I would encourage you, as you hear this, right, as you go back to this, is you do the acts of love despite your lack of feeling. And even if you're in the room and you're not married, right, this applies to like every relationship you have, is that we can be people of peace and people of love and people of kindness, even when we do not feel that way. But again, I'll take it back. It's always the power of Christ in you. It is not something that you just kind of like, I can do this today and I'm going to be really great at it, because you will fail. I have failed so many times. I like this kind of thing, this next slide, where it says, contract, I will if you will, right? When we think of marriage as kind of contractual, it's like, hey, you sign this part, I'll sign this part, and we've kind of made a deal, right? And as long as you hold up your end of the bargain, I'll hold up mine. But as soon as you disrespect me, or as soon as you don't do what I want, or you make me feel a certain way, I can kind of like be like, oh, okay, now I'm not going to meet you there. But when you view marriage through the lens of a covenant, it's this idea of I will regardless, that there is no thing that you can do that's going to make me not love you. Now, again, in the room, I want to communicate too that I'm not asking you to overlook bad behavior. I'm not asking you to say like, hey, just ignore that stuff that's happening. When I talk about the practical steps, you gotta move back to move forward in your relationships, right? There are certain situations that I cannot cover within a 25, 30-minute message. And so I'm maybe in the room, you're kind of like, this guy, he forgot to mention this. I would encourage you to come talk to me afterwards. Let it drive you to something deeper, right? I cannot dive into all the things that you may want to, but I do know this, is that in the same way that God, his love is a reflection and it's shown in marriage, The same thing happens with a covenant. God has made promises to his people that he will never break. There's a ton of things in the Old Testament that are very unique. But there's a couple times where he's making a covenant or making like a promise with the people of Israel. And this is going to be, there are some kids in the room. Plug your ears. This is like super graphic, but he does this thing with Israel, with Abraham, where he makes this deal and he takes like an animal and they cut it in half and they like separate it and they both walk through this thing. They walk through this like dead animal. And you're like, why are you talking about this? The idea is it's like this symbolizing of this idea of a covenant. And God is making this promise, and he's essentially saying, we're not going back on this thing. You can't put that animal back together, right? Like we have passed through this thing, and it's this picture, this representation that I will not go back on you. I've made a promise to you, and I will not go back on it. I will not. There's this idea in the Bible, in the Old Testament called hesed, which means steadfast love. And I want you to know that your Creator loves you with a steadfast love and wants us to be an embodiment of that steadfast love in all of our relationships. A covenant's not about negotiation. It's not about joining life with another person in loyalty. It is about joining life with another person in loyalty and commitment. It's not about what it feels right or good. It's actually about, okay, so there's this TV show that I was watching. You could sense it, couldn't you? And in it, there's this episode where these two people are in a relationship, and they're exploring this thing called the ick. How many of you have seen this? Right? It's okay, good. Right? And it's that thing that the significant other does, where you're kind of like grossed out by it. You're like, oh, that's like, oh, right? Steadfast love is about sticking with it when the ick happens, right? When it's like, oh my word, I cannot see past that thing. It's like, no, I will actually still love you in spite of that thing that might drive me a little insane, right? Alicia is a wonderful person, by the way. If you know my wife, she's wonderful. Yeah, whoever started clapping, you're probably right. No, actually don't do it. But one of the things that it's interesting, it's so small, but it like has driven me insane, and there's an opportunity for me there to stick at it, is in the morning she's not friendly. I know that sounds so silly, but I'll come down in the morning, I'll be like, good morning. And she's like, and I'm like, oh my word, is everything okay? Like, what did I do? And she'll be like, please don't talk to me. Like, she's like has to have her coffee and has to spend time with Jesus. And she's got her like rhythm and stuff that she does. But I'll be honest with you that it really made me mad. It's such a small thing. It's such a small thing. But early on in our marriage, like many, many years in our marriage, is I let it sit right here and I let it fester. And it really, really bothered me. And I was like, man, I got to find someone who's like nice to me in the morning, right? Like, this is terrible. And I know you're thinking like, dude, grow up. It's just her like wanting her own time. But it's interesting the small things that over time, left unchecked and undealt with, can become big things. And so I want to encourage you this morning is that when you go, hey, I'm in this no matter what, even those little small things that eventually become big things, or the big things that are huge things, there is a path through when you say, hey, I'm going to love this person with a steadfast love. I'm going to stick by that even when the ick happens. And I'm going to share some stuff that I will tell you that Alicia had every right to walk out of my marriage. I have had so many struggles that I brought from my childhood, my teenage years, my college years, that I left undealt with and unchecked. There's younger people in the room, so I'll just let you fill in the blanks on that, and you're probably right. Addictions, struggles, things that I felt like I had to cover up and I could not be truthful about. And so I brought that into my marriage and was like, marriage will fix this. It did not. It actually made it much, much worse. And I felt like I had to hide that shadow part of me. And I did for a really long time. And people probably thought, like, those guys have it all together. Look at them. They got 2 kids. They're really happy. They're going on trips together and all kinds of fun stuff. But inside, I would say that I was like a divided self. There was the shadow part of me that I had not dealt with. And I'll tell you this, it will come out. There was cracks in the foundation. There's cracks in my soul. And it wasn't until kind of like a big moment, probably about 6 years ago or 7 years ago, you're welcome, teenagers, 6, 7, that it all came out. And I'll be honest with you, like a lot of people would be like, you should get out of there. And she should have. She could have. She maybe have ought to. But Alicia is not here this morning, but if you're watching, I love you. She is, to me, the embodiment of like this idea of steadfast love. Like she's a good picture of Jesus in my own life, because I betrayed her trust. I lied about a lot of stuff. Had some really low points where I thought, like, I'm just going to self-preserve. I'm just going to self-protect. And she forgave me. She stuck by me, even in those hard times. And I will say maybe the difference is, and I'm not like being like, you're awesome, Evan, because I'm not, is I also wanted to get better. And I think that's a really important piece in a marriage, is that you've got to have both being willing to get better. And I'm going to talk about a few practical steps that I think have really helped us take some steps forward. And I hope you don't see this as this kind of like story of like, guy was messed up, Alicia was really loving and steadfast, now everything's really great. Because we still struggle. I still trip up. I still mess up. She still does, not as often. But my hope is you understand, too, that I'm not asking you to do this under your own power. I'm not asking you to do this like, hey, just work harder and you'll be great. Add these three things to your life, and you'll have the algorithm to successful marriage. This is not an algorithm. This is just a journey. This is just experience. All right, let's jump in. One is I would encourage you to forgive fast. There's a cool story in the Bible where Jesus, his disciples come to him and they're like, how many times should I forgive? 7 times? And what they're doing is being like, give me that like max limit, right? And Jesus goes 70 times 7. And you might be like, 490 feels oddly specific. Jesus is like flipping it on their heads, being like, I'm actually talking about unlimited. I'm talking about you not stopping forgiving. There's a really cool song that I really like called by All Time Low called Different Languages. And the chorus goes like, it's not about having 20 kids or having a house or about having all these things, but it goes, love's what you choose to forgive. And I think that really is a great thing. I'm not telling you to overlook things, please, but I do know this, is that if you let the things build in you, is grudges will burn down any relational bridges you have. They just sit right here and they fester and they grow, and the small things become big things, and the big things become what seem to be like inseparable, like I can't overcome those things. Ephesians 4:32 says this, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as Christ, God, forgave you. When you can practice this idea, not towards, again, not asking you to be just like all of a sudden just forgiving immediately, but when you can practice this idea, you will see your relationships take steps forward, right? To let the small things go. There's a great verse that talks about letting love cover a multitude of sins, right? What can you let love cover? And then on the flip side, what can you actually go and say, hey, this thing bothers me, but I'm not going to hold it against you, right? I'm going to keep going back to that thing where she's not the nicest in the morning. It's so silly. But once I went to her and was like, hey, and she's like, I just am so tired and I don't want to talk to anybody. It was interesting. Once I communicated my feelings about it and was like, hey, I can let this thing go, how now it's just not a thing. I would encourage you to forgive fast with things. And know that's a difficult thing. And again, it's Jesus in you, not just your ability to forgive. The second thing I would encourage you to do is find your crew. What I mean by this is community. I literally could not have gotten through this life and through my struggles without people in my life. I talked about the 100-miler earlier. There is no way I finished that thing without these 5 guys who came with me. I have a picture on the screen. I don't know if you can see it or not. They're literally taking off my socks and my shoes during this race and like replacing my socks and shoes and bandaging my feet and helping me get through it and putting food in my mouth. This was at like mile 58. And they're helping me along. And I hope you don't see that as like impressive of me, because it's not. I look like a shell of a human being right there. I put that up there because relationships are everything. You don't get through these difficult times. You do not get through the challenges in your marriage without having a solid crew, a solid community alongside of you. One of my favorite authors is Henry Nouwen, and he says this about Christian community. Christian community is the place where we keep the flame of hope alive among us and take it seriously so that it can grow and become stronger in us. I literally had dinner with a friend the other week, and we were just talking about the struggles and the challenges in our lives and in our marriages and in our workplaces and things like that. And I'm telling you, I didn't walk out of there necessarily with answers, but I walked out of there being like, okay, I can do this. I'm actually not alone. And you're not alone either. I hope you know that if you are in a place right now where your marriage is on the rocks, you feel like you've hit the end of that thing, where life feels like it's not kind of like, how do I keep moving forward? You are not alone. There is somebody in this room who might be walking through the same thing you are. But it's going to take that step forward of faith for you to step into community, for you to step into the opportunity to share and be vulnerable with your soul a little bit, but to find that you are not alone. And there's something so beautiful in that. The third and final thing is to fix the foundation. Alicia and I have been in counseling for, I think it's about like 7 years now. And my parents, when they found out I was in counseling, hopefully they're not watching, were like, what's wrong? Like, what's wrong? And I was like, I didn't go into it too deeply, but I was like, no, we're good. Like, we're just like, we're wanting to like, continue to get better. And there was this idea for a while that counseling was kind of like, you only do that if you're at the end, and like, it's the only thing that could potentially save you. But I want you to rethink counseling right now, because I want you to think of it almost as like taking your car in for regular checkups. I'm not a car or sports guy. I think there's a game today. But I want you to think about counseling as like these regular checkups for your relational health. I find that I learned so much about myself, about her, in counseling, and I walk out of there and I'm blown away. And like literally 2 weeks ago, our counselor, who is a construction sportsman guy, was using this idea. He said, hey, a lot of marriages, it's like a house, right? You build this house, but you're building it on a shaky foundation. And maybe it has this like, he's like, the ideal marriage has this like beautiful view of the ocean, but the house is like infested with termites. Thank you so much. Way to read my mind. And he goes, so you got to actually like tear the thing down and go all the way back to the foundation of the thing. And I thought, I probably didn't explain it as well as he did, but I have learned so much about actually going backwards, like we talked about last week, to move forward in my relationship, to understand my motivations, some of the habits that I had that were not so great, the hang-ups that kept tripping me up. And I found that in a lot of ways, I had taken the foundation of my life and built it on Alicia in a lot of ways. And so as she went, so I went. As she was up, I was like, oh, okay, I'm okay too. And if she was frustrated with me, or if we had some kind of relational issue, it felt like my world was crumbling because I had put everything I identified in on her. And I want to encourage you this morning, and this is going to be my final thing, right? I'm going to leave you with a quote, and then I'm going to talk about the songs we're going to sing. John Mark Comer says this. He goes, the point of marriage isn't to find our missing half, right? You are not empty because you have not found that person. It's to help each other become all that God intended. And I have found that in my own marriage with this fix the foundation idea, that if I build my life on her, that if I put everything I've got into this marriage, when it's rough, I found my soul at a rough spot. I find my spirit at a rough spot. But when I can actually take it and switch it and put my foundation on God, who loves me unconditionally, who will never change, who will never sway, I find that I can be more stable. I can actually I'm more strong in that thing, and I can react and be in my marriage and be a person of love and be a person of peace. Again, the point is not to find fulfillment in her or for somehow her to be like to provide meaning in my own life, but instead it's to find who God has made me to be. At the end of the day, right, is our series. And this is what matters, is actually to find out who God created you to be, to know that you are loved by God, to know that He cares about you, and that you can be a person of love and joy and peace in your marriage, in your friendships, in your relationships. You can go with love. But I would encourage you to think about those things this morning. To forgive fast, to find the crew, right? Might be here at Eastown, might be at your workplaces, might be in your neighborhoods, and to fix the foundation. Maybe this morning you have been skeptical about taking that kind of first step towards counseling. I would encourage you, it's a scary first step. I'm not pretending that it's going to be easy. It's probably been the hardest journey I've ever taken. Tears, pain, resistance on my part. But I have found that in that refinement process, God has taught me so much about myself and her. And so this morning, as Chase plays and as the band comes, they're going to sing 2 songs. They're going to sing Firm Foundation and Build My Life. I want you to take a minute and just think about what God might be wanting to speak to you, about what you are putting kind of your hopes and dreams and value and identity in. And I would encourage you instead to think about putting those into Jesus. Let me pray. God, thank you so much for this morning. God, I thank you for your love. I thank you that you never leave us. God, that you are with us, that you can get us through any kind of challenge, any battle. God, I pray that we rest in you. God, I pray for just anyone in this room right now who maybe feels like they're at a crossroads, or maybe they feel like this is the end of a relationship. I pray that you meet them there very clearly, God. And I pray that you will just wrap your arms of love around them and that they know that they are seen and known by you. And God, I just thank you for the opportunity we have to get to know you better. In your name, amen.
We hope you enjoyed today, and thanks again for taking the time just to tune in. If you have any questions about Eastown or what it means to put your trust and faith in Jesus, we have many resources available on our website. If you have more questions than what you can find on the website, simply email us at info@eastown.church, and we would love to connect with you. We believe the church should be making a positive difference in your life and in the community in which we exist. And we can only do that through people's generosity. If that is something you would like to do, simply visit eastown.church/give. And again, thanks again for joining us. Tune in next week. Or hey, better yet, visit us in person. Have a great day.